I've never known darker times, and I've covered the protests live at the Hatchetfield's kennel. I am Dan Reynolds, with Action News, weekdays at 10 p.m.
Max Jagerman is a modern expansion of the classic dumb jock character trope. While most characters of the same archetype can act as secondary villains, mild antagonists, or vessels for protagonists' character development in their own respective media, Max Jagerman is an entirely different beast. Literally. Let's talk about it.
I learned that at the anti-bullying assembly last month. Fuck Nugget!
No hyperfixation has held me in this tight of a chokehold since I was 15. I am eating, sleeping, and breathing nerdy prudes must unalive. That was a joke. The point is, I've spent most of the past couple months watching every possible second of this musical and in turn have fallen in love with the show's titular villain, the Jagerman. Which, I mean, you know, who wouldn't? Played by the incredibly talented Will Branner, written by the incredibly talented Nick and Matt Lang, and scored by the incredibly talented and clinically insane Jeff Blim, Max Jagerman was destined to be a hit from the very beginning. I'm sure if you're watching this, nothing I'm saying is news to you. Max is the perfect balance of nonchalantly sinister, surprisingly earnest, and horny on main. But what I want to talk about is how Nerdy Prudes took a tired trope and gave it new life, one that was desperately needed. But to talk about that, I want to talk about that tired trope in the first place. What trope exactly am I talking about? Why is it so tired? Take a nap already! The jock is a character trope with a wide subset of smaller character tropes. You have the dumb jock, loving jock, jerk jock, violent jock, the list goes on. The main points are this: big, strong, sport, mean, dumb.
Handsome.
But the variations are many. Some jocks have a heart of gold, some jocks have a rough home life, some jocks become friends with the nerds they bully, some jocks try to destroy them entirely, some date the popular girls, some are complete players, and some, depending on the genre, either kill or end up killed themselves. Max Jagerman is a melting pot of every type of jock. This is on purpose, since in Literal Monster, you hear this line.
Like a jockey cliches.
Like I said, Max is kind of a conglomerate of all the jocks you've seen before. This kind of thing works perfectly for a comedy that has brief emotional beats, which is Star Kid's bread and butter, and so Max fits perfectly within their discography. Max can be a threatening presence indeed. Scary enough to have scrawled messages in the hallways of Hatchetfield High, warning potential victims of his prowess. However, there are also times where he comes off quite earnest, almost awkward in his attempts to flirt with Grace and be friendly with the Nerd Squad. You know, those couple seconds before he vows to kill them all. And there are times again where the dumb jock trope shines through, like when he genuinely believes that Lin-Manuel Miranda has risen from the grave and wants his soul. And again, still, there is a callback to Max's home life being a little worse for wear, saying that the prank that ended up killing him was the nicest thing anyone's ever done for him, and then saying that his dad calls him a cuck, which I need to know the logistics of this insult for Max to take it so personally that it's reason enough for him to stay and fight what he interprets as a real skeleton intending to steal his soul. At times, he is also quite self-aware. In Max's verse in Literal Monster, he says,
Don't need no one to tell me high school will be my peak, so I'm willing to take advantage.
It's almost like Max is aware that he's the show's dumb jock and decides to just roll with it and cause as much destruction as possible. He knows even his cronies don't agree with much of his tactics, yet keeps them in line anyway due to his sheer looming presence.
Shut the fuck up, Jason!
There are little moments like this sprinkled throughout the show that showcase Max as the final boss of the jock trope. But the biggest thing that Star Kid does that turns Max Jagerman into a villain that can sustain a 2+ hour runtime, holy shit, is this. They turn him into the Old Testament God. You know that line Grace said?
I always thought there was something about your wrath that was so Old Testament.
It's literal. He's literally God. It's a metaphor. Don't cook off the video, please. Let me explain.
I love Jesus.
It's not a one-to-one comparison by any means, but we cannot deny the massive amount of religious references the musical makes in relation to Max Jagerman. By taking the wrath of God and shoving it into the body of an 18-year-old football star, Max rules Hatchetfield High with an iron fist, and we bear witness to what happens when you defy him. Now, if you focus, and by focus I mean half pay attention, there are religious references everywhere throughout the show. Not even counting the some 3 or 4 times Max literally just says,
I am God!
He mentions breaking bread, he mentions Judas, he mentions forbidden fruit, he literally rises back from the dead. He bringeth with him both light and darkness. Max Jagerman giveth, and he taketh away. The people around him literally have to pray that he doesn't come for them. Max is self-aware of all of this. He knows he's a monster, but he believes he's acting with a greater power that gives him the go-ahead to rule the school with such steadfast assholery. He simply knows in his heart that what he's doing is just. Remind you of any extremist religious groups?
Editing B here. I would like to clarify something because I feel like I am not explaining myself enough. I would like to emphasize that this is my opinion based on my experience of religion. This does not speak on anybody else and how they experience or pray or, believe in God or anything like that. As I was growing up, we would have a lot of teachings about the Old Testament and a lot of preachings about, if you don't love God, devote your life to God, worship God, follow everything God says, follow everything the Bible says, then you're going to hell, which is where I see a lot of the parallels in the way Max acts and my view of God and religion in that aspect. So if any of this offends you, I am very deeply sorry. This is only my opinion and nothing but my opinion. Okay, goodbye.
Starkid has taken the jock and pushed it to its limit. He's not just a boy. Grace said it best. He's an idea. And his ideas have spread through the school until there's barely anyone around who even bothers to speak on the contrary. The nerds, the cheerleaders, the cool kids, even the principal. They all know that Max runs that place. They've accepted the pecking order. That is, until...
That night.
Linda, call my lawyer.
Let's kill him!
I was flabbergasted when Max died. I'm sure this was intentional, and though watching it back, the foreshadowing is...
I'm not comfortable with this place. It's not structurally sound.
a little more obvious upon a rewatch, but watching this the first time, my jaw was on the floor. Through the floor, into the basement. They killed the main villain in Act 1. All that setup, all that religious talk. A literal monster. Okay, yeah, well, he was just taken out by a 10-foot fall and a couple 2x4, so I don't know what the fuck we're gonna do for the next hour and a... Motherfucker just rose from the grave. You mean like Jesus? In the beginning of the show, we see messages written on the hallways. All hail Jagerman. You're next. The quarterback kills. Rip them apart. Jagerman rules. There's even one that says 9-10, he's the Jagerman, which is a neat tie-in to the old 1-2, Freddy's coming for you, Freddy Krueger song. That even ties in with the beginning of Act 2, where Grace sees him in her dreams, and damn, they really just thought of everything, didn't they? What I'm saying is that these messages, while exaggerated, do speak to the horrors of a high school bully, and Max proves himself to be a scary enough bully to have warnings like this written in the halls. They seem like scared bully victims of the past, probably warning the classmates that come after them about Max. But by Act 2? Yeah, okay, yeah, we see these in a different light. No, Max is not just a killer quarterback because he can throw a football better than Jesus. He's now literally a killer quarterback. Jagerman rules the school metaphorically in Act 1, but by Act 2, he actually rules the school, you know, by murdering its students. That's the expectation subversion. You think those are just messages warning about an unpleasant bully, but by the middle of the show, Max Jagerman is a genuine threat, making those foreshadowing notes on the walls even more insidious when rewatching. Basically, everything about Max that was established in the beginning as an over-exaggerated metaphor about a bully just becomes literal. He's a literal monster. He will literally rip you apart. You are next. And here's something fun that I found while writing this video. The last name Jagerman has German roots and translates roughly to Hunter Man. This is the German translation, which got its origins in the word Jaeger from medieval times, which just means hunter. Like, holy shit, they really did think of everything, didn't they? I also think it's worth noting here that Max seems to be the only one capable of breaking the fourth wall, which he was doing before he resurrected, but did even more so afterwards. I think this further shows Max as a godlike figure, since I don't recall at the time of writing this any other characters being able to do that, showing Max's ultimate power over the other, since he literally has lines of communications with different dimensions, i.e. the audience, like he's aware that people are watching and the other characters are not aware. Another major subversion of our expectations is what happens to people who defy Max. Usually in the more family-friendly depictions of the jock trope, there comes a moment where they're humbled by the protagonists. The nerd finally stands up for himself and triumphs a victory over the dumbfounded jock who slunks off with his remaining cronies while the credits roll. This often is the final and main confrontation a nerd has with their jock, where the nerd finally gains the confidence they've been building over the course of the story and gives that bully what for. And everyone claps, so I like what Star Kid did here, which not only in my opinion is a lot funnier, but also a great deal more interesting. Take the scene in Pasquale's parking lot.
The first date, Steph? Have some respect for yourself!
Peter shows up on bully turf, and ergo, the bullies show up to defend it. He tries to stand up for himself. He tries to step out of the mold that people like Max, probably literally just Max, has shoved him into. He tries to have that moment of self-confidence that humbles Max and makes him stomp off stage, dethroned. That's not what happens, because Max sees all. The first thing he says to Peter is the mention of his bow tie being missing, which I think is interesting because even a slight change in appearance that doesn't adhere to Max's whim is called out immediately. He makes fun of him for being rich, then makes fun of him for being poor. Nothing Peter can say or do will change his predetermined path set forth for him by Max Jagerman, and that path is to be Max's victim. You won't defeat its kind. And to make sure this is the case, Max literally brings him to his knees. Peter tries one more time to have his standing up to the bully moment, but he can't even finish his sentence before Max brings him back down to where he feels Peter should reside. Nerdhood. In Max's eyes, Peter should know better. In Max's eyes, Peter is not his own person with his own thoughts and feelings and aspirations. He is Max's to control. Peter doesn't have free will. Max is the one who wills all that step on Hatchetfield High's holy ground. Remind you of any extremist religious group? And I know it's just a scene transition, but him literally changing, the light from light to dark and then immediately following it with,
I'm your god.
makes it pretty blatant. No? No? Wait, seriously? Okay, what about Richie?
This project's on thermodynamics. What the fuck are you talking about?
Okay. The show's title track, Nerdy Prudes Must Die, is probably one of Star Kid's best songs, period. It is the ultimate testament to Max Jagerman's position in the Hatchetfield universe in this moment. Max doesn't just become a godlike figure. He literally just becomes the god of Hatchetfield High. Just humor me. Let me paint the picture. Richie had been terrorized by Max for, assumedly, his entire school career, same as Peter. He's been relegated to nerd status and accepted his place in the pecking order. The only thing that dares give him the will to start questioning his position is when Max is finally gone. In the absence of enforced consequences, Richie starts to step out of the mold. He even receives compliments from the cheerleaders, the football players, the people who had normally denounced him under the demand of Max Jagerman. In short, Richie finally gets his moment. He gets to look at himself as anything other than a loser, a nerdy prude. And then Max comes back. Richie is terrified.
Obviously.
Max is dead, isn't he? But no, here he is, and he's coming for him. He tries to run, but he can't. He tries to get out, but he can't. He tries to escape, but he can't. He runs until he's thrown to the ground and stays there. Max tells Richie, "Repeat after me." Richie says, "Okay." At this point, too terrified to try running again, Max says, "Who will pray for you?" More religious reference. As the bridge ramps up, we hear a familiar song in the background, way back from Act 1. It's the bridge from Cool as I Think I Am. Peter sang that song right before walking into Pasquale's, where Max rendered him helpless and beaten. It's a heartbreaking reminder of where this scene is going. We hear Richie's friends singing the bridge as Max gets louder and louder, saying, "This is the consequence of what you've done." I don't even think he means the accident that ended up killing him. I genuinely think what you've done means that Richie is yet another person under his control who has dared to step out of line, who has dared to defy Max's will. But Richie tries one more time. At the climax of the bridge, Richie makes one final cry of defiance, one attempting to scream into the void for salvation. Of course, all that flowery language is just an excuse for me to show you the clip, so roll it. Wrong clip?
This is the consequence for what you've done.
This is why I believe that the consequence of what you've done is in relation to Richie daring to step out of line and have control over his place in the world. Because Max follows with an absolutely juicy and well-performed scream.
What did you say?
It's a scream of anger. How dare you say you're not a loser after I have deemed you so? And then silence. The silence after he screams this is absolutely chilling. Music gone, lights out, save for one spotlight. And yet Richie tries one last time.
Don't kill me. I'm not a nerdy prude. I'm not a loser.
And what I'm expecting, for Max to scream again, to jump into fisticuffs and take Richie out right then and there, doesn't happen. Instead, Max softens, which to me is more terrifying. He softens and says, "Of course not." He agrees with Richie. Richie is yelling out for anyone to hear that he is not a loser, and Max affirms it for him. He acknowledges that Richie isn't a loser. He's not a nerdy prude, but Max Jagerman is God. He decides who's cool and who's not. He decides if Kyle can date Brenda.
The answer's still no! By the way.
He is the one that wills it into existence. It doesn't matter that Richie says he isn't a loser. It doesn't matter that it's true. It doesn't matter that Max acknowledges it to be true, because the only thing that matters is Max. Max decides. He controls. "I'm not a loser," Richie says. Of course not. But he dies anyway. Because he does not have free will. He cannot simply decide that he is not a loser. Max has decided for him, and he had the choice between acting accordingly and facing the consequences. Richie faced the consequences. It may not be fair, but it is Max's will, because he is God. I fucking love it! Not only is Max Jagerman the most terrifying, hottest bully in all of Hatchetfield, I'd even hearken to say he's the most compelling villain that StarKid has ever produced. Except for Twisted. Sorry, Twisted, I love you. Mwah. Instead of trying to change everything about the jock trope, StarKid decides to lean into it so hard that the entire story changes. And it makes for a hell of a good one. Here's my last point. Max Jagerman cannot be taken out by any human entity. Our nerd squad needed to call upon Cthulian-like demon god things to take him out, and even in his final moments on this mortal plane, Max takes one more moment to speak directly to the audience, telling us,
Whatever! It was fucking worth it!
Before being dragged down to Drowsy Town. And I ask you, is that not proof enough that Max Jagerman was some kind of god? It's not? Shit. In conclusion,
That was absolutely disgusting.
I'm sure that everything I've said about Max Jagerman today was stuff you already knew. I'm sure someone's already talked about it on Tumblr or YouTube or TikTok, and I already know I'm late to the party. I just needed a place to get all my incoherent thoughts out about my current hyperfixation, because it's all I've been talking about, and I've bothered my family enough, and no one else in my life cares about a comedy musical where a bully goes on a rampage trying to kill a bunch of nerds. So if you made it this far, thank you for taking the time. Tell me your nerdy prude must die thoughts below. Bye! Would you even believe me if I told you that Peter was my favorite character?